Obvious that this is a bipartisan effort in dealing with the security of the American people. The senator from Maryland is not from my party. Together we serve on the Intelligence Committee. We have served hundreds of hours on that committee together, doing everything we can to provide our country with the opportunity to protect Americans from harm. The threat to Americans' harm today, has never been greater in my time on the Intelligence Committee. As we are dealing with fires raging in the Middle East, and we're dealing with terrorist groups forming as we speak, targeting the United States and targeting Americans and inspiring even Americans to take up arms against their fellow Americans for whatever jihadist cause or cause that they are using as the basis for the brutality that is spreading throughout the Middle East and the brutality that can happen here if they respond to these inspirational social media requests from organizations like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and many, many others. Now, I understand Americans' frustrations and concerns about their civil liberties and their privacy. And those concerns have been bolstered by acts of government here that have been acts that I think can hardly be explained as to why this has happened. Look at what's taken place with the IRS. Talk about targeting people's invading people's personal privacy and their civil rights, and using this organization of government, the power that it has for political purposes, is outrageous. And of course the American people are up in arms about something like this. The debacle of Benghazi and Fast and Furious, and on you could go over the years in terms of what has happened to instill distrust in the minds of American people. And so when a program like this comes along, and we are told, unfortunately, the American people are told by members of this Congress falsities as to what this program is and what it isn't. It just feeds that narrative that Washington is in their bedroom, Washington is in their home, it's in their phone, it's listening to their calls. Washington is monitoring everything they do, the locations, when this simply is not true. We have an organization and a tool put in place with that organization, the National Security Administration, following the tragic events of 9/11, that the American people insisted on putting in place. Let's use the tools that we can to try to prevent another 9/11 from happening, to try to identify terrorist attacks before they happen, not to clean up after they happen, but before they happen. And this program, which has now been described, of course, the frustration here for those of us on the Intelligence Committee is that we're not able to come down and refute statements that are false that are made here without breaching our oath to not release classified information. But we've had these briefings with all of our members. Some don't choose to attend, and therefore their narrative continues without any ability to publicly challenge what they have said. It has been said on this floor that big government is listening to everyone's phone calls. That is patently false. First of all, it's impossible. There are trillions of phone calls made every day throughout the world, and the calculation is that it would take 330 million employees sitting there monitoring Americans' phone calls to be able to listen to everyone's phone calls. So it's an impossibility, number one, and number two, it's guaranteed that this is not happening because the authorities given to the National Security Agency prevent that from happening. And there are layers and layers of attorneys and others who oversee this process, including those of us on the intelligence committees in the Senate and the House, including the Justice Department, and including the executive branch. All three branches of government are so concerned that this program could potentially be abused that the oversight is such that it would take a monumental conspiracy involving hundreds and hundreds of people to all agree that, yes, let's do this and breach the law. If what has been said on this floor about the nature of this program was correct, I would be the first to line up and say, I'm here to defend the liberties that are being abused by the government. And I can guarantee to my constituents that this is a high priority for me, that I not support anything that would violate their civil rights or violate their privacy. And that is true of those of us on the Intelligence Committee, whether we're Democrat or Republican. We've heard today from Senator King, who's on the committee. We've heard from Senator Mikulski, who just spoke from Maryland. We've heard from Senator Nelson, who's formerly on the committee. On the Democrat side, on the Republican side, our leader of the committee, Senator Burr, has laid out in great detail how this works. The tragedy here is that in being forced to describe what the program is and what it isn't, we've had to unclassify information. And guess who's listening? I hope a lot of the American people are listening, because they need to understand that much of what they have heard is simply falsity. It's factually incorrect. I'm not going to go into why this has happened, why some members choose to say things like they're looking at and I'm quoting here, it's been said on this floor, big government is looking at every American's records, all Americans' phone records, all of the time. The NSA collects Americans' contacts from your address book, buddy lists, calling records, phone records, emails, and do you want to live in a world where the government has us under constant surveillance? None of us want to live in that kind of world. That's why we live in America. That's why America is what it is. This is not Stasi Germany. This is not a communist regime. This is not a totalitarian society. We would not allow that here. Our Constitution guarantees us that privacy. And we cherish that privacy, and we protect that privacy. But to come down on this floor and make statements like that, it's irresponsible. And it talks about a narrative here that is just not the fact, just not the case. It's also been said, poor Ben Franklin here has been dragged into this because the quote that has been stated about Franklin, and that should drive our decision on this point, was those who give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary security deserve neither liberty nor safety. I agree with that, but the key word here is essential. And this matter has come before the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has said what the NSA is doing in storing phone numbers only, not names, not collecting information, is not essential to liberty. And they have declared it a necessary and effective tool that is open. It's the only thing that's in your phone record that you receive every month, and which is the date of the call, the number he called, and the duration of the call, and the time of the call. And nothing more than that. And why is this done? It's done so that when we determine the phone number of a known terrorist in a foreign country, we can go into that haystack of phone numbers and say, was that phone number connected to a phone number held by someone in America? And Senator Burr has gone through numerous situations and cases where, had we previously had that, we potentially, in fact, the former director of the CIA said we likely would have prevented 911, because we now know that a phone number in America was connecting to a phone number of a terrorist group, Al-Qaeda, and we could have taken that information to the FISA court or to a court and gotten permission to check into that to see if that was leading to some kind of terror attack. And it doesn't take much to recall the images of what happened on 9/11, where we were, what horror we stood and watched coming over the airwaves, and the tragedy and the loss of life that took place is changing the face of America. So it's important that we tell the American people what it is and what it isn't. It's important that members take responsibility to understand that this is an issue that rises above politics. This is an issue that cannot be used and should not be used for political gain, whether that's monetary gain or whether that's feeding a base of support that responds to the scare tactics of America listening to all of your calls, big government in all of your business. This is too important an issue. This is the safety of America. This is preventing us from terrorist attacks. That threat is real. It's more real than it's been in a long, long time. So I talked yesterday about the existing program, what it was and what it isn't. It's been talked about here by my colleagues on the floor. We have moved to a point where we have to choose between the best of two worse choices. One choice is that we eliminate the program. One of our members here in the Senate has publicly indicated that that's what he wants to do. He claims it's unconstitutional. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the support of the Supreme Court, who have dealt with this issue, nor legal constitutional lawyers. That is a case that just simply cannot be made, because it doesn't impede on anyone's liberty. As again, I would say if it did impede on Americans' liberty, I would be the first in line to state that and to fight against that. But it's a solution to something that's not a problem. But secondly, because one individual would not grant even the shortest of extension, even an extension on two non-controversial parts of this program that no one has challenged, to allow that to go forward so that we could keep something in place to address a potential threat that could happen. Even that was denied us last evening as the clock was ticking toward midnight and the program expired. Someone who was so determined to eliminate this entire program, who has misrepresented this program to the American people, so determined to stay with his narrative that he would not even allow an hour, not even allow a day, not even allow minutes for us to try to reconcile the differences here with the House of Representatives. And those differences are pretty small. Now, Senator Burr has been in negotiations with the House and with members of the Senate relative to some changes and modifications in the USA Freedom Act, which was supported by a significant majority, bipartisan majority in the House of Representatives. I think that is a step in the right direction. It doesn't solve all the problems. My concern with the Freedom Act is the concern of many, and that is the act has some major flaws, some which I thought were fatal. But I have to measure that against nothing. And sometimes, and we have been left, thanks to the procedural maneuvering of one member here, we have been left with only two choices. Senate Majority Leader laid those out in some clarity yesterday and today. And the choices are completely eliminate the program, go completely dark, take away this tool, put Americans more at risk. Thanks very much, but it's over, and try something else. Or a provision that has been passed by the House of Representatives that moves collection of the phone numbers from NSA to the telephone companies. Now, the problem with the bill is it doesn't mandate that movement. It's a voluntary act that phone companies are most likely not to want to adhere to. And primarily because they now have to set up a situation where they potentially could be liable for breaches of the people who are overseeing their program. Now, there are 1,400 telephone companies in the United States. Many of them are small. But to move this program, which has the oversight of 6 layers of oversight at NSA, which has the oversight of the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Intelligence Committee, which has the oversight of the Department of Justice in the administration, and which has the oversight of a federal court, the Federal Intelligence Security Court, called FISA. All of that security oversight to make sure there's no breach now gets transferred over to up to 1,400 telephone companies. Now, the people that oversee this program, it's a very small number at NSA that operate this program. They have had intensive background checks, security clearances. They have proven their commitment and to make sure to do everything possible not to abuse this program. And there's never been a documented case, never one case of abuse of this program. Again, a solution to something that isn't a problem. All of a sudden now we have dozens, if not hundreds, if not more than 1,000 phone companies all putting their own program in place. This is not something they would like to do, number one, because it's going to be very costly. Number two, they can't guarantee that every one of their people are going to have the same kind of background checks and security checks as NSA has. They will not have the oversight of the intelligence committees, of the Justice Department, of the executive branch. We are trusting a private entity to do the kind of things that multiple agencies, and you can just count on probably some breaches of security there as people want to use the capability to abuse that program for whatever reason. Maybe they're checking up on their wife or their girlfriend or their business partner, or who knows for what possible reasons they could use this. So it really doesn't add privacy protection. It detracts from privacy protection. Secondly, the retention of records. It's voluntary. Now, if we have some amendments that are passed by this body and accepted by the House, we will get notification if a company doesn't want to retain those records. But there's no retention authority granted here to us to ensure that those companies will keep any records, keep any phone numbers, and then the capability of the program will be significantly reduced. We're having to put in a very sophisticated program that the NSA says we're not sure it's going to work. We're not sure if this process that the Freedom Act requires to replace what we have now is going to be effective, and it's going to take many months to determine if that is the case. And so it's an untested program that we are putting a bet on that this is going to work. It would be nice to know that we had something in place that we could easily replace this with. So we're going from the known to the unknown. And we're making a bet that this is going to be more effective and provide more privacy for the American people. It's a diminishment and significant degradation of the current program, and it will not be as effective as the program that is currently in place. Nevertheless, we have to weigh this against nothing. And that's the position we've been put in because one senator would not allow an extension of time for us to come to a more lengthy debate and reasonable negotiation in consultation with the House of Representatives to arrive at something that would give us more assurance that we have a program in place that doesn't breach privacy but allows us to detect potential terrorist attacks and stop those attacks before they take place. Madam President, it's having had to go through all this and raise the kind of issues here and talk about a fellow colleague is not fun. And it's not something I hoped I would ever have to do. But I could not stand by and watch a program that is helping protect American people from known terrorist threats and their safety be jeopardized by falsities that are being said about what this program is and isn't. And I'm hoping now, and it looks like we are coming together on something that is far from what we need, that's going to significantly degrade our capability, but it's the only choice that we have. And we're going to have to weigh that decision is something that is far less better than nothing. And ultimately, given the fact that these threats have never been greater, something, even if it's not what we now have, something is better than nothing. But we've been put in this situation unnecessarily by a misrepresentation and a public that hasn't been informed. It's not their fault. We haven't been able to because so much of this has been classified. Now much of it is our adversaries, the terrorist groups, they know a lot about it. The program they didn't know about before. Thanks to Eric Snowden and thanks to some misrepresentation, we are left with a devil's bargain, and that is to choose the best of the worst. We'll talk this through today. We will have that vote tomorrow. In my mind, it's absolutely essential that the modifications that are being made and being presented, I won't go into depth about talking about those. It's already been talked about here. It's essential that those be passed by this body, and of course it's essential that the House accept them. I know a lot of negotiation has gone on back and forth, and it will continue to do so. But it's the only way to keep a program in place, even degraded as it is, and compromised as it is. It's the only way to keep a program in place. So I will be supporting those tweaks, those changes, even though I think it's far short of what we need to do to fix the issue that was rushed through the House without much deliberation, but to make it stronger, to put us in a better position. I will support those, and if those amendments can be passed, then I will reluctantly choose to vote for something that is better than nothing, as degraded that it is, in order to keep this program as one of the essential tools, and it's one of many, as we collect information, to keep that in place.